Welcome to Fight News Now Extra. I'm John Pollock. We're kicking things off this week with John Ramdine and Robin Black stopping by as we'll chat about Saturday's UFC card from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. We're going to chat about the main event performances of Damian Maia and Ryan LaFlare, what happens next for Josh Koscheck, and a rough night for referee Eduardo Hurdy. The main event of Saturday's UFC Fight Night card in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil saw Damian Maia control Ryan LaFlare with his jiu-jitsu for 4 of the 5 rounds and cruising to a unanimous decision victory. The takedowns were there for Maia, who constantly worked to the mount but could never lock in a submission onto a very well-conditioned LaFlare, who did come on in the 5th to win the round. Maia was also deducted a point towards the end of the fight for stalling, and the judges scored it 48-46 across the board. Josh Koscheck returned to the octagon just 3 weeks after his loss to Jake Ellenberger at UFC 184, this time to meet Eric Silva. The fight didn't get out of the opening round, with Silva connecting with a number of strikes and thwarting a takedown and even attempting one on his own. The finish saw Silva lock in a tight guillotine by the cage and get the tap at the 4:21 mark, and marks the 5th consecutive loss for Koscheck, who also finished the final fight of his UFC contract. And UFC President Dana White was furious over the officiating by Eduardo Hurdy on Saturday night. During the Leandro Silva-Drew Dober bout, Silva had a guillotine from half guard and Dober was working to free his head when Hurdy stopped the fight without Dober tapping. Dober disagreed that he was in any trouble, and White is going to pay him his win bonus, and now Dober has 2 weeks to appeal the decision. Here with John Ramdine and Robin Black, looking back to UFC's Fight Night card on Saturday night in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Let's chat about the main event first. Damian Maia, it was simply his jiu-jitsu here that was the difference. And Ryan LaFlare, I was very impressed with just how conditioned this guy was over the course of 25 minutes. But with Damian Maia, I mean, it was exactly what we knew was going to be the biggest threat, and Ryan LaFlare just couldn't stop it for 4 or 5 rounds.
Yeah, and I'm sure Ryan LaFlare is going to take a positive out of this fight. You know, it's mixed martial arts, especially at 170 pounds. Chances are you're not going to stay undefeated for very, very long. So to be 11-1, and that loss is to Damian Maia, what's great. And you learned, wow, there's some guys that have some serious top control. Go back to the drawing board and learn how to deal with these guys, because it's probably coming in the future, because there's a lot of guys like Johnny Hendricks. Good luck getting them off of you.
Yeah, and you know, it's an interesting one. It was a really cool one to watch, because we know Damian Maia can do that. We know there's a lot of guys that can do that. But the answer has been the rising quality of takedown defense. The answer has been guys having a game against the fence that can stop you from taking them down, and being so good out in the open field that you never get them down. If Damian Maia doesn't get you down, we don't see any of that. But Damian Maia could get him down over and over again. And even when in the third, when he ended up with a takedown, Maia attacked the leg and reversed him. So that was the unexpected part. You go back to the Rory fight. It worked perfectly against Rory, but after 5 minutes of a young, super athletic guy, he was more fatigued. This kid's young and super athletic, and this time he could do it for 4. So that was a great performance by Damian Maia.
Yeah, the ease of which Maia got those takedowns, that was maybe the most surprising factor. As well, right at the end, John McCarthy not putting up with anything here, deducting him a point for stalling. I think that John McCarthy seems like a rare breed of guys that are simply going to use the rules to their benefit to really encourage action and let guys know that, hey, you grab the fence, you hit a guy low, for instance, that there are going to be penalties for this. And I know it's not always consistent across different officials, but I think that this is something that fighter knows that, hey, when I'm in a cage here and I stall with this particular referee, it's not going to fly.
The unfortunate thing is that it's not consistent, because we're seeing guys constantly grabbing the cage and not even getting a warning for it. Damian Maia, self-preservation, points taken, and you can understand why Damian Maia is going to do this thing. Like Robin pointed out, this guy he kept coming after 4 rounds when Damian Maia was on top. Maia absolutely exhausted, so okay, what am I going to do? If I stand up, chances are he's going to punch me in the face. I'm going to pull guard. But the inconsistency has got to change, and I think to
play devil's advocate to my own point, if this had changed the outcome of the fight, would there be outrage over this?
Yes, there would be.
Hey, any one of these other referees, Damian Maia wins the fight, and this point deduction changes the balance, I'm sure there would be outrage for that very point, that this is not consistent, and I don't think fighters should have to cater their fighting style to which official.
They might, though.
Of course. On some level you do. Like, when you know it's a guy who stops fights early, you make sure you're moving. Like, there's a mild awareness. You take a Rich Franklin, a Uriah Faber, these vets, they'll be aware of that kind of thing. It's sad, but it's true. But in this case, I think the reason John took that point is because that's an infraction, but it was the way he was using the infraction to remove his opponent's ability to win the fight. It's like, hey man, if you're going to cheat in such a way that this guy can't win the fight, we're going to penalize you for that.
And was warned about it.
Yeah.
I mean, this was not out of left field for Damian Maia either.
True, but if you're Damian Maia, it's like, well, he just had 4 rounds to win this fight. I'm not going to let him win the fight in the last round.
And I'm up 4, so you can take 2 from me if you want.
Exactly.
I think I'll. But, you know, hey, while we're talking about refs, what about that knob who...
Eduardo Hurdy.
Wow.
I assume that's the referee.
That is
that's that guy was... Oh, God, that one was bad. You got a kid who's trained so hard and flown all the way down there in the best shape of his life, dieted and done all the things you have to do and paid extra money to fly his own corner and all the things you do, and this idiot goes and gives him a loss for no reason.
I think that with Drew Dober, you know, the saddest part of this is that the commission in Brazil were stating that, you know, these are kind of the criteria of when we will overturn a decision, and this really doesn't fit into it. It's probably going to go down as a loss for Drew Dober, and I'm glad he's getting his win money. In a strange way, I think this controversial loss, people are way more aware of Drew Dober than had he escaped that and finished Leandro Silva. But unfortunately, it is likely going to go down as a loss on his record.
Which is strange because word is that Leandro Silva trains jiu-jitsu or has trained in the past with the ref.
Well, that was a misconception. Apparently there is another fighter named Leandro Silva. It is not the actual same fighter who was in the cage. But nonetheless, I think one of the worst stoppages that I can recall, definitely of recent memory.
Yeah, what's weird about it, when Rob and I were talking about it, if you're a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and you are officiating and you see that position, you should know whether or not somebody is in jeopardy.
Yeah. If Marcelo Garcia has a guillotine on you from half guard, you should be very aware you could go out. But most people, you're not going to finish that against a quality guy like that.
All right. He is Robin Black, John Ramdeen, and that is all for us. More of Fight News Now Extra is coming up.